Welcome to Fore Yore Lore, the show where we bring you interesting people and compelling stories. We hope you enjoy this episode. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and share with your friends.
Welcome to For Your Lore. I'm your host, John Adamick. It's my pleasure today to introduce Tom Gore. Tom, who is an actor and also a veteran who has seen many combat situations overseas and also has been decorated for his valiant service, is also someone who has the distinction of being perhaps the oldest, if I may say it, the oldest American football college player in the United Kingdom. Tom, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Well, it's a joy for me. We only met recently, and one of the things that caught my attention when I had ideas for doing this podcast, the tagline was interesting people, compelling stories. And within just a few moments of hearing a little bit about your story, I was absolutely spellbound because your path has been one that very few people I know of, directly or indirectly, can say that they've taken. Right up to the present moment, you're preparing now, you're home on break and preparing to go back and continue your college football career over in the United Kingdom, and you're here in North Carolina right now. So
Yes.
what amazing story. You've been written up in Sports Illustrated, and you have an IMDb profile that is extensive for any actor. Tom, when we met the other day, it was through kind of an unplanned connection in terms of acting. And when we first started talking, it was apparent to me that you're very gifted at acting. How long have you been acting?
I started actually professionally acting back in 2010.
Okay.
I was between deployments, and it was like, I had a little bit of downtime, decided to help somebody out with a short film. I was like, okay, and it was fun and it stuck. And after I retired, I got more heavily into it.
That's fantastic. And I think we were talking beforehand that you've got over 60 credits so far. Is that accurate?
Yeah, as a performer, I've also helped out on a lot of movies as well, either directing, producing, cinematographer, special effects, whatever it takes really to make the show happen and the story get to an audience.
Well, that's interesting. You mentioned story, and one of the things that I really felt drawn to when I started this podcast was the idea of sharing people's stories. And if I recall correctly, you mentioned that your focus for your advanced education pursuit right now is in the art of storytelling. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I'm working on my master's in storytelling up in Loughborough. It's in the Midlands of England. It's a fantastic university. Lots of resources academically, physically, or athletically. And it's a world-class facility. It's phenomenal. And the pathways and doors that opened up for me to get there have been just mind-boggling.
Do you mind me asking, did you play football in high school?
I did not. I was my mom was afraid I was too small to play football in high school. I was 6'4" and weighed about 170 pounds. I was very,
Wow.
very thin. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm twice that size now and a little more, so it's not really much of a issue as far as durability in the stance of being a football player.
When did you realize that you did want to pursue football?
Oh man, in the Army, when you're not deployed, you're always trying to do something to keep yourself entertained. So we'd have some pickup games of flag football, two-hand touch, that kind of stuff. Um, uh, when I was working on my undergraduate, uh, or just even attempting to see if I could get my undergraduate degree, I went and talked to the head coach, and he said, and I asked him, "Hey, coach, can I play football here?" And he said, "Are you eligible? And are you fit?" And I was still in shape. I knew I could still handle the physical workload, and I had to go to the athletic director, and figure out if I was still eligible, because the NCAA rules at the time said you couldn't do any professional compensated performance of your sport. So if I had done a commercial where I was a football player, I'd been ineligible to play. And I have not had that opportunity yet. So I was allowed to play 4 years when I was 42 until I graduated when I was 46.
Wow.
And
That's amazing.
I was until recently the oldest active uh, football player in the NCAA. And there's a guy who's playing out in South Dakota. He's 49.
Okay.
That's strapping on the pads out in trying to get his associate's degree. But yeah, and so they've mentioned me in his article as well, and that's that, and I'm just humbled by that they're even mentioning that I'm part of that.
That's amazing for so many reasons. And I played football for one season back in, I think it was fifth grade. And we did have a great team. I think we were 5-1 or 6-0 or something. But even back then in the 70s, I remember there was talk about, the risk of football and so forth. And my wife's family, her uncles and her brother, my brother-in-law, played high school football, and they were state champs up in Michigan when he was in school, had an undefeated regular season. I remember going to the games and watching, and I was really thin in high school. I didn't make any sports because, number one, I didn't have any skill. Number two, I didn't have the drive. And but I always enjoyed the idea. I followed football. Um, did you have any particular football heroes that you looked up to when you were younger?
Um, when I was younger, not so much. As I got older and understood the sport more, it was pretty much Teddy Bruschi. Not just
Okay.
because he had a really cool name, but the guy had a stroke, came back. But when he recovered, he came back and strapped on the pads.
Wow.
And just the ability, just the mental fortitude to, after a stroke, hey, and he's still out there. And it's not just him. That's the thing. Every one of his teammates knew what was up, and they, when you're doing your job where 10 other people on the field are trusting you to do your job to the same caliber that they are, it says a lot more of your ability, because there's 10 other people trusting you. And him to come back after a stroke and still perform. And
Wow.
he's been on the ESPN as a commentator, and those guys that talk about football in between the games and stuff, and he's still cognizant, and it's a true test to him as a human.
Yeah, that's amazing. So I turned 56 a few weeks ago,
Happy
and
birthday.
pardon me?
Happy birthday.
Yeah, thanks. I've been feeling it more and more. Like last year, 55, I was like, all right, what's this going to look like? But um, I've been out of shape, well, most of my life. But let me just say that the idea of being able to maintain the level of physicality that's needed, like your athletic director asked you. And no, your story in terms of your college experience, if I read correctly, you were going to the college to visit with one of your children.
Yeah, my daughter Kaylee, she was trying to find out which school she wanted to go to help, what do I want to do when I grow up? And she was going to go to school. So I was escorting her around, and I'm like, how do I even guide her? I didn't go to college. When I was 18, I was shipped off to basic training in Fort Benning, Georgia.
Okay.
So I didn't know anything about higher level education, upper level education. So as I'm escorting her, I'm asking all the questions for her benefit as well as my own. And so we went to school together. We had no classes together. her
Okay.
degree her degree plan and my degree plan were night and day. They were completely different sides of the page.
So what was her reaction when you started talking with the athletic director?
Oh, she was like, she she was like, I'm gonna go to college with my dad, and he's gonna play football. You're gonna ruin my life. Yeah, so, I made sure it was a weekly point that she told me that I was ruining her life.
When my daughter was in grade school, we were at some event and I was in line, and I remember we're standing there like I'm supposed to. I think she was in fifth grade, and I look over and said hi to somebody. She turned around and said, "Dad, you're embarrassing me." And so I said, I'm going to get a shirt that says Caitlin's dad, and I'm going to wear that frequently. But you've actually met my daughter. She's into acting, and that's kind of how I got connected. Because, like you with your daughter in the college, I'm trying to figure out how I can support my daughter in her profession. My son's an engineer. I don't know anything about engineering, but I'm trying to support him in his profession too. And so the idea of going to school together to me would be very interesting. I think I would probably be given a set of rules that I have to follow in certain places I could be at certain times. I don't know.
Uh, a lot of things. She pretty much avoided all the football stuff anyway. And I stayed away from her degree building because a university, you pretty much get the one building that your primary
Yeah.
education is at, and then there's a couple other rooms, and so her building is one side of the campus, my building was on the other side of the campus. So unless we made arrangements to have lunch together, or she came home for dinner, or whatever the plan was, whatever time and assignments allowed to happen, maybe not.
So you finished your studies and you've got, I mean, you've achieved legendary status, I'm sure, in many ways, but particularly in regards to your continuing football career at the collegiate level at the age of 46. And then how did you decide, okay, I'm going to keep it going?
So now a friend, his name's Derek Gumond. He reached out to me. He is a headhunter, and he tries to find American athletes to play overseas. England is a growing American football community. The fan base is there. Um, the drive and the passion are there. Um, the amount of physically eligibly interested people, though, is not there. I mean, they don't grow them like Americans over there. They're very British. They grow to the standard British athlete size. So a guy like me over there is a giant.
Okay,
And they have a lot of rugby players who spend a lot of time rugby, but rugby is very different than American football.
sure,
And it's not so much the energy level. It's not so much the ability to hit and take a hit, because those rugby guys can give and take hits like the best of them.
sure.
It's technique. There is a certain skill in football based on position, that the rugby guys take about it. They have to lose their bad habits they have from rugby and then learn good habits in American football to transition over. The younger they are when they do it, the better it is on them. But that has been their biggest obstacle so far. And other coaches trying to recruit players, like, here in America, we hear that there's not enough kickers, so they recruit that one really good kicker from the soccer team and bring
Right.
him over. Yeah. Well, they go to the rugby team and try to recruit the good rugby players to come over and play American football as well.
Okay.
And some of them like it, some of them don't get it. And there's cultural differences. Uh, where football is big in America, it's not that big in England. Soccer or football
Right.
is a lot bigger. There's more fanfare and more opportunities of growth. And some of the guys aren't, they don't want to play. If they're going to play a second sport, it's going to be rugby. instead of soccer.
Okay. So, I mean, to me, it seems you've got all these amazing skills. And in my work in human resources, um, I'm fascinated by how people bring together experience, giftedness, talent, skills, all of those things, and put them together in a way that's meaningful for whatever team they're with. And in your case, it sounds like perhaps, and maybe you've already got this in the works, but a novel, a movie about, I mean, really.
I have been approached. My story is currently being shopped in Hollywood, Los Angeles, to various studios. I don't know where it is at this point of where it's happening. I have too many assignments right now in my master's program to sit down and just actually write about me. I have the writing I have to do for my degree plan.
Right.
That is currently taking up 99% of my brain housing group. So after I'm done, of a novel or a few novels or so, or would probably be the next option to this and seeing where it goes. And then, and there's so many different ways to slice it up that putting it all into one book would be War and Peace. It would literally be enormous, and I'd have to actually make sub books out of it.
Sure. Well, I mean, there's people that do that. And I had the pleasure of speaking with Homer Hickam recently, and of course his memoir, Rocket Boys, was made into October Sky, and he's got 17 other books.
Oh,
And I
geez.
just finished his most recent one. And it was fantastic. And he had so much talk about his military service, his work in the scuba diving and NASA and all that. So I mean, you could certainly have a whole I guess that would be a franchise, the Tom Gore franchise.
Oh, that'd be a wonderful thing, especially in movies. That is a goal. It
Yeah,
it it literally is a goal, is to have a movie series out.
I think it's great. Would you play yourself?
Um, I would like to. I really would. Um, but then again, if we're at that level, I'd probably be like a secondary character in my own story of a movie about me.
So I went back to school in 2020, and it had been 29 years since I had been in school.
Ooh.
And the first it was for a master's of arts in ministry, and the first course was um, research writing. And my background was in English and communication. I thought, well, I can write, and I started taking this. I had to learn Turabian and all these things. I was flat out just toast after a very brief period of time. And as I got closer to the completion of the degree, more and more I started asking, what have I done? I can't stop, but I don't know how much more I've got. So where are you at in your degree course right now?
I've knocked out a third. Uh, so when we go back, that second chapter we'll knock out, and then where the timing comes out that my son graduates from school at the end of my second chunk, and then
Okay.
we'll return for the third chunk right after that, and I'll be back in America. Potentially should be back in America, going back into acting, making movies roughly around October
Okay.
3.
So your acting career, I mean, you've done a lot of things, everything from comedy. It sounds like maybe that's where you kind of really got serious about getting into acting after your military career. Is that accurate?
No, actually horror of all
Horror.
things.
Okay.
Yeah, with a name like Tom Gore, you kind of get roped into a lot of that special effect type movies, and horror has a lot of those type of special effects. And we try to do a lot of comedy horror. We like to bring the audience in on the joke, because some of it is just so ludicrously crazy that it's like somebody thought this was a good idea. Okay, let's have fun with it. And as you're having fun, as you do, the audience knows you're having fun. And as gruesome and as despicable and despising as it is, all the blood and gore and the screaming and the horror and the terror, it's just like, so it just becomes so campy. It's hilarious. And as an entertainer, if you've gotten your audience to forget about bills in the real world and chores and mortgages for an hour and a half, you've done your job.
Absolutely. There's certainly a lot that could be said about that. I mean, the psychological impact, the adrenaline, the endorphin, and all of that. My daughter that likes the horror movies. I've just never really connected with them, and I don't know if it's because in the '80s, when I was kind of coming of age with that stuff, I don't know. I saw Pumpkinhead, and I was like, I just don't know about this stuff, and then some of the other shows that came out. But I do like a well-crafted thriller, and it's interesting the balance, and we were talking about this before, the balance between portraying, um, building what the audience thinks they expect versus what maybe would actually happen in real life, and kind of meeting their expectations while also trying to be true to the source material. Do you find that to be something you consider?
On those types of movies where it's like based on a true story, it's based. Um, there's, you know, in a horror movie based on a true story, you're not going to get the victim's story. You're not going to get their side. You're going to get an embellishment of their side of the story. Did they die gloriously? Did they just get snuffed out like a candle in a tornado? Did yeah, did you even the best coroner's report of, well, this person took 45 hits from a 2x4. you know I don't want to see somebody getting bludgeoned 45 times with a 2x4. That's, you can't make that cinematographic. And if somebody takes this the wrong way and tries to turn 45 bludgeoning hits into cinematography, film worthiness, and you know what, go ahead, just credit me as that you made that your challenge of making a movie that included that, because there's, you know the human body is durable. It's not just this one and done kind of thing. Yes, I get it. Some people aren't aren't long for the world. Things happen. Everyone's going through their own struggle. But the human body is durable. And when you get a bunch of people that believe, despite the situation that they're in, that they can get through it, then they're gonna get through it until some type of terminal event happens. And those end up being like the best horror movies because of that thriller element.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I totally expect Robert Rodriguez to hear this podcast and say, "Yep, I'm gonna find some way to bludgeon someone 45 times safely just to show Tom Gore that it can be done." And I'll be,
Hey,
that'll
there's
be my
there
favorite movie.
there you go. I mean, there's all kinds of really skilled, I guess, film professionals who gravitate towards certain genres, whether it be comedy or horror or action. And talking with people, like, just looking at the offerings on any given streaming service and seeing what's available. I mean, the horror genre is incredibly successful. There's an unending audience for that, it seems.
Yes. Yeah, the morbid curiosity, everyone's favorite serial killer, is a thing. That no one gets out of life alive. Everyone everyone knows this. You can't get out of, no one's immortal.
Do you think your size, I mean, do you use that to your advantage in terms of casting opportunities, or is it a hindrance at times? How does that work for you?
Both. It's double-edged sword. Um, I now know more because I've had to shoot a few films, that your talent being different sizes really puts a struggle on production for composition. when you're making a composition of the shot of, remember, each film is a work of art. Each frame is a work of art. Stanley Kubrick said that. And so when you are putting your talent in the same shot together in the same frame, how they align in the frame is going to do more for your story than anything they say. Because, when you sell the movie, you're not selling it off of any of the dialogue. You're selling it off the poster art and the pictures on the back of the DVD or the VHS tape or the beta tape or the two clip shots that you see on the streaming service. It's the image, what that tone invokes, what those two images actually, now they've got a little bit where you'll hear like a 10-second clip of a scene to try to entice you into watching that movie. But it's really based on that little synopsis, that 3-sentence synopsis, and those two pictures. So if your name's talent star doesn't pull them in, the tone doesn't pull them in, what you write doesn't pull them in, you're not gonna have an audience. And everybody knows that. And those that don't are they need to continue building their education.
Do you find that the advance of technology and the rise of I guess the popular, and by that I mean just available to anybody, kind of videography and so forth, those platforms has changed the dynamics of filmmaking? For example, like I enjoy what I consider to be clever things, regardless of the genre. I saw yesterday somebody put a mashup. It was The Sound of Music as an action movie. It was a 2-minute clip, and it was very clever. And some of the stuff kind of goes to what you were talking about here in terms of the level of display for the outcome. But it's just so absurd to me. But I see fan films, 2-minute fan films, science fiction, fan ideas. I guess they're kind of like trying to get a name. What's going on with that?
Yes, the market is saturated, but as saturated as it is, there's not enough content, story-driven content, character-based, story-driven content will always be in demand. There will never be enough supply. How many times have you heard the song Take On Me by Aha? How many times have you watched the music video?
Right.
Countless. You can't even, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You've watched it countless of times. You've heard this song so many times that when it plays on the radio, you imagine the pencil drawing guys in your head. As humanity ages, movies will do the same thing. You're going to hear dialogue from some other person in the real world, and you're going to automatically assimilate what movie that came from. There's several movies that do that now. There's Star Wars lines. There's Sound of Music lines and scenes. There's Pulp Fiction. There's plenty of movies that you've watched over and over again. There's movies that you've watched once. And sometimes that's a good thing, sometimes that's a bad thing. One movie I've watched once and it stuck with me, Seven.
Oh, yes.
Watched it once. Don't ever need to watch that ever again.
Yep. Yeah. When we look at the changing dynamics of film, I was watching the other day, my son and I were watching the Industrial Light and Magic documentary.
Yeah.
And it was brilliant. And I just really enjoyed the older techniques like the stop motion photography and things like that to continue. Do you see anything happening revolutionary in film and specifically in independent films?
There is a giant boundary between those two elements. Between ILM is inspirational. They can show you 100 tricks, and you will just be able to just grasp potentially maybe 10, and you may be an expert after years of practice at one. And they have that $1 million budget to execute. Independent films, they have to invent everything. You know, they don't have the $1 million budget. It's a shoestring budget at best. They're favors, friends, beg, borrow, steal, however they can get the shot to put it together, get the story together. And that's a challenge. It is a significant challenge. The way to bridge that is if the studios reach out, they get wind of a project and send a producer to actually help pull them along the way, help bring them up to studio level. And I don't know of any of the big studios doing that now yet. I would love to see it. It would be a great thing. It would help create different stories, different talent, different things to watch on a Saturday afternoon.
You mentioned the aspect of team, story, character. What do you find is the biggest challenge to keep a team together when everybody has life going on through the duration of a production?
Money. If your team is well financed, they can work longer. If they're not well financed, they have to get a job. Life does not stop. Life finds a way.
Yeah.
That was Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah. We've been watching his The World According to You series and have enjoyed his ongoing personality exploring the world. So briefly, if we could talk a little bit about your experience in the military. I mean, you had a full career in the military, is that right?
Yes, I did 20 years.
Thank you for your service. That's amazing to me.
Yeah, it's most of my adult life, I served. I joined when I was 18, got out when I was 38. You know, that was 9 years ago. Yeah. So yeah, majority of my adult life, I was in the Army. And the second half of that was mostly deployed.
I can't imagine. I can remember I was working on the student newspaper at my school in 91, and when the war started. And I remember it was the first time I was really aware of tracking like a modern war from an outsider's perspective, because it was far away and I didn't know anybody there. And it was just very surreal to me. I can't imagine what that was like to do multiple deployments. What are some of the things that you have done in your service? I understand you were a combat helicopter pilot.
Yes, I was an Apache Longbow helicopter pilot. I flew that for 2,000 hours plus of flight time.
Wow.
And yeah, it was a thing.
Well,
And your viewers, if you just Google what the Apache is and does, and you know, it's a tandem rotorcraft, and yeah, that's what I did.
was that something that you just found an affinity for, or an aptitude for, or you felt, this is where I need to be, is doing that type of work?
You have to apply, and you have to be approved, and you have to apply yourself. You have to physically, go through flight school, go through warrant officer
Right.
candidate school, go through the advanced aircraft training, basic flight skills, gunnery ranges. It's not just hey, I'm just gonna go grab the car, turn out the headlights, put it in neutral, slide it out the driveway, and just take that thing for a joyride. It's it's not it's not like that. It is a full-blown advanced level education that you are constantly working at.
I can't imagine. I had a relative that was in flight school for getting their pilot's license, and I got to go up with them when they were doing is it VFR?
Yep.
And I was in the back seat of a 3-seat plane, I guess, and I couldn't believe that I felt every bump, like almost it was like going up steps in that thing, going into the cloud. And he's got a helmet on, and I thought, I don't know what I've signed up for. I can't imagine what that was like, learning all the different things to operate one of those helicopters. So, how long did it take from the time that you were accepted until the time that you were fully operational as a pilot?
It took me roughly 2 years.
Okay.
You sign up and you're like, you're in for the long haul. When you get through warrant officer candidate school and you go off to uh, flight school, they tell you that, hey, your career, your life is now revolved around certain stages, and it takes anywhere from 14 months to 2 whole years to get through.
That's amazing. When you're on the field and I'm sorry, I can't pronounce the name of the city, the Loughborough?
Loughborough, Loughborough, Lufbru.
Loughborough.
Yeah, I know it's Loughborough. I got it. They Worcestershire it.
Thank you for finding the other word that I struggle with. So I think I mentioned before in passing that my daughter was over at University of Hull 2019 until the beginning of the pandemic, had to come home early. And we had this trip mapped out as a family, 10 days, going and seeing the beautiful Isle. And it was going to be near, you said you're near Nottingham over that
Yeah,
way?
well, I'm about 20 minutes southeast of Nottingham.
Hmm. Okay. And you said that's the Midlands?
Yeah, right in the Midlands.
Okay. Now, when you're there on the field with the other players, whom I'm guessing most of them are college,
Yes.
traditional college age, 18 to
Yes.
21.
Yeah, they're normal, regular British college age students, 18 to 21, 18 to 22, and they're all working on their engineering degree, economics degree, uh, kinesiology degree to, you know, this is what they want to do when they grow up. They're just happen to, be part of the athletic department as well.
So when you're out there with them, I mean, to me at that age, I would have been intimidated. I mean, number one, obviously your stature, but your experience. I mean, do they know your background, the military background and all that?
My teammates do. We have, practices, hangouts, go to the pub, watch American football on Sunday evenings with the time zone change. And we, locker room, you can't not talk in the locker room. And then when you're on the sidelines, when it's not your rep, when you're all doing indie or Skelly or whatever the drill is at the time, you're working, you end up, you're sitting there bullshitting with each other.
So one of the things that's a major focus in my area of work is the idea of teams and leadership. And there's a lot of books written on leadership, a lot of books written on teamwork and all that. But your experience, really, I've never met anybody that has that kind of incredible life and death team experience, also creative, also athletic focused. And so, is there anything about teams that you find stands out to you that you wouldn't have known 25 years ago?
Oh, wow. I'm going to choose B.
Yes.
I'm just going to fill the circle in on that test and slide that one across. Uh,
Because I could see you doing TED Talks. I mean, seriously, all over the place doing TED Talks on teams. And
yeah, that would be great. If I knew how to set one of those up, I'd have no problem speaking on teams and leadership. Because there are, I take back that B. I'm going to erase that B and put in C, both A and B. There's three generally accepted ways to lead. And when I say accepted, I don't mean it's the preferred way, A, B, or C. It's knowledge based, like this is our leader, this is how they lead. And then you got your guys that lead from the front. They're the tip of the spear. They are going head first. They're showing you the way, and they need you behind them, pushing them along the way for the momentum. There's the guys in the rear, the guys in the back, whipping their forces forward, just driving the train like their worker bees are the horses pulling a wagon with more worker bees in the back being drug along. And I said it's accepted, and it's not the right way, it's not the wrong way. It's just people know exactly, they can understand that is a leadership style and technique. That lead from the rear. Most politicians do that, and they're terrible. I hate them. They disgust me. And then you got your guys in the middle, your leaders in the middle, your Spartacus, your Washington, the guy who is in the middle of the field, who is right there next to your guy, next to the guy, and you form a line, and you expect him, yes, he's your leader, but he's there right next to you. Dave Fee was that kind of leader. He was my colonel in Iraq, and he was right next to you. He was in the fight right next to you. And that common bond, that shared moment, whether for good or for not, is what's going to help you persevere, and that through that perseverance you will prevail.
well, thank you for that. I appreciate that. I've really enjoyed getting to know your path, your journey, some of your goals and where you're at. Before we come back for closing thoughts, I wonder if you would do me a favor, Tom, and help me out by bringing us back.
Yes. I'm Tom Gore. Please tune in more of Fore Yore Lore after this.
Thank you. Thank you. That's very meaningful to me. So, hey, we're back with Tom Gore, and I'm not sure where we're going to put that in, somewhere in there, but I'll probably go back and just put it in.
Put it in a commercial in there.
I need to come up with a commercial. This is a hobby cast. I sent off to one of the podcast places. I said, hey, you need to have a new genre called Hobcast, and put mine at the front, but I never heard back. So the takeaway from our conversation today, in addition to your service and you're really putting yourself out there in many ways, just amazing. I mean, you're just really remarkable. For people who are interested in seeing your acting, what would be a couple of the films that you'd recommend?
Broken Swords, The Last in Line. It's available on DVD at Walmart, online, bestbuy.com, and
Okay.
be able to pull that one up. And right now, and The Last Airbnb, which is also available on Amazon Prime and some of the other streaming services.
Okay. And we can get links to those and put them up. What genre are those two, Tom?
Broken Swords is a fantasy drama.
Okay.
I know it's marketed, it looks adventurous, but it's actually a fantasy drama.
Okay.
And Last Airbnb is horror comedy.
Okay.
And it's a short film. It's only about 12 minutes long, but you should enjoy it. It's that's the intent is made with is that you enjoy it.
Well, I appreciate that. I want to touch on that in a couple minutes here because something came to mind as we were talking. Um, I really, I'm just going to go ahead and ask, can I be in your movie when you do your Tom Gore trilogy? Can I be like a reporter how about Man with Hat? Can I be Man with Hat?
Yes, yes. As long as you wear those glasses and you do that pen thing. You have to do that pen wiggle thing when you're trying to get attention for your question.
Hey, I'll
Yeah,
work on that. If you could send me over some sides.
yeah.
I'm learning. I'm trying to learn the lingo, sides and real and all this stuff. And I don't know what I'm talking about. I am looking forward. This has really been fun for me, and I'm looking forward to seeing your work, following your career, watching. Can I watch your Loughborough game on
Uh,
TV?
my wife streams it on her Facebook Live.
Okay.
We have 2 games in the regular season when we return to finish out the season, and then we've already secured the number 1 seed in the playoff bracket. So we've got, and it'll be the first game, we're number 1 seed, and it's a home game for us. And saying we win that, the second game is also a home game for us. And the third game we don't know about, but the fourth game will be in Nottingham, and it's going to be televised on the Bucks channel, BUCS.
Okay.
And so my wife streams it out on her Facebook Live, and it's Denise Gore.
Okay.
And our games are, there's a 5-hour time zone difference. Our games are Sundays, roughly around 12 noon there. So 5, 6, 7 a.m. in America, depending. So you could wake up Sunday and start your football journey on a Sunday morning instead of waiting till after lunch.
I'm gonna be I'm gonna be like Buddy. I'm gonna say, I know that guy. I know him.
Elf is really big over there too. It's
Well,
crazy.
it should be for good reason.
Yeah,
Um,
John Favreau crushed it with that one. That
I'm a
guy's
fan of his work. I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. I like pretty much anything he's done.
yeah, that guy is a movie genius.
Was it Zathura? Was he involved with Zathura?
I am unsure of his involvement with Zathura. I know that uh Iron Man 1 was his.
Yeah,
Baby Grogu is his. Baby Yoda is his. With the Mandalorian.
yeah.
Elf is his. The Replacements. He was an actor in that one, but that's a Keanu Reeves, Gene Hackman football movie.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah,
I didn't realize.
that movie's a little near and dear to my heart.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. Um, Tom Gore, combat helicopter pilot, military veteran, actor in over 60 films, and perhaps the most mature American college football player in the United Kingdom. Tom, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's been great.
Thank you.
Interesting people, compelling stories.